She didn't build this crowd. She inherited it. There is a 21-year-old tennis player who has never won a Grand Slam, who is not seated in the top 10, who lost her last tournament in almost straight sets. And yet, when she walks onto a court anywhere in the world right now, stadium security has to move her to the bigger arena. Broadcasters can hear the crowd noise from hotel rooms blocks away. Her opponents, including a top 3 player in the world, have publicly admitted they get confused, then amazed, then almost grateful, by the wall of noise that follows her. Her name is Alex Eala, and in a few days, she walks into Flushing Meadows, New York, for the 2026 US Open. But here is the question almost nobody is asking correctly. Is Alex Eala building a fan base in New York? Or is she walking into one that was already there? One that has been standing quietly in Queens, in Jersey City, in Long Island, for 50 years just waiting for someone to show up? Stay with me, because the answer changes what you think you know about fame, about sports, and about what it means for a scattered community to finally see itself on a stadium screen. Here's the detail that should stop you in your tracks. Weeks before Alex Eala won her first ever tour-level title, before she had beaten a top 3 player, before the headlines, before any of it, fans in Manila were already lining up for hours just to catch a glimpse of her at a local event. Not to celebrate a win. There was no win yet. They were simply waiting. And after she finally did beat that top 3 player, in a rain-delayed final in the US Capitol, the woman who lost to her, an American player playing on her own home soil, didn't get booed off by the crowd. She got thanked. And in the days that followed, her own podcast picked up thousands of new Filipino subscribers. People who had just watched their countrywoman win, turned around and embraced the woman who lost. Ask yourself, when has that ever happened in sports? We're going to unpack exactly why. And by the end, you'll understand why what happens at Flushing Meadows this year is bigger than any single match. If stories like this pull you in, hit subscribe now, because we're about to go deep, and you will not want to miss where this one ends. The number almost no one talks about. Let's start with a number. Tucked inside the New York metropolitan area, spilling across Queens, into Jersey City, out toward Long Island and the edge of Bergen County, New Jersey, is a population of Filipino Americans estimated at more than 250,000 people. That is not a small enclave. That is close to the population of a mid-sized American city, hidden inside the largest one. And this community didn't arrive because of tennis. It arrived across decades. Nurses filling hospital shifts, engineers building infrastructure, families reuniting through visas, people chasing the ordinary, exhausting, hopeful project of building a better life for their kids. Woodside and Jackson Heights in Queens have been nicknamed Little Manila for years, home to generations of Filipino grocery stores, churches, and community halls that were serving this population long before anyone had heard the name Alex Eala. That's the part of the story that usually gets skipped. So keep that number in your head, 250,000 people, because it's going to matter a lot in a few minutes. Who is Alex Eala? Really? So who is she? Alex Eala is 21 years old, left-handed, 5'9", born in Quezon City in the Philippines. At age 13, she left home to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, where she has developed under coach Joan Bosch. She turned professional in 2020, and for years she was exactly what you'd expect from a promising junior. Talented, unranked among the pros, mostly unknown outside tennis circles. Even though she'd already made a bit of history, becoming the first Filipino to win a junior Grand Slam singles title at the 2022 US Open. Then came 2025. As a teenage wildcard at the Miami Open, Eala shocked the tennis world by beating 3 separate Grand Slam champions back-to-back-to-back, Yelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and then world number 2 Iga Swiatek to reach the semifinals. She lost that semifinal to American star Jessica Pegula in a 3-set battle, but by then, something had already shifted. People were noticing. By 2026, the shift became impossible to ignore. Eala cracked the world's top 30 in March. In June, she won her second WTA 125-level title in Birmingham and reached the semifinals in Berlin, beating 2 more top 10 players along the way. And then, on August 3, 2026, in the US Capitol, she did something no Filipino tennis player, man or woman, had ever done. She won a full WTA Tour singles title, defeating world number 3 Jessica Pegula in the final, 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. After the match was delayed a full day by rain, it vaulted her into the world's top 20 for the first time in her career. That tennis resume alone is remarkable, but it still doesn't fully explain what's been happening in the stands. The mystery of the crowd that came too early. Here's where it gets strange in the best possible way. That Washington final, a Monday afternoon, rescheduled because of rain, meaning fans had to skip work or rearrange their whole day just to be there. Should have been a quiet, half-empty affair. Instead, it was full. Filipino flags, shirts, chants, all inside a stadium in the American capital. For a tournament Eala had never played before, that week. Ask yourself the obvious question. Where did all of that come from? You don't organize flags and chants and travel plans and vacation days in a single week. That kind of turnout takes planning. Takes a network. It takes people who already knew, already cared, already had this on their calendar. Possibly for months. And it's not new. Even before Washington, at the WTA event in Dubai earlier in the year, Pegula, who has now played Eala multiple times, described being stunned by the size and noise of the crowds trailing her, joking that she could hear them from her own hotel room. Rewind further to the 2025 Miami Open, when Eala was still a teenage wild card nobody outside tennis knew by name, and Pegula has openly admitted she was baffled by the crowd that showed up then too, turning to people around her and asking, essentially, who are all these people and where did they come from? That's the clue sitting right there in plain sight. The crowd didn't arrive because of the win. The crowd was already assembling before the win, which means the win wasn't what built the following. The win simply gave the following somewhere to stand. The Pegula effect. Now here's the detail that might be the strangest of all. And it's real, it's documented, and it tells you everything about what's actually going on here. After Jessica Pegula lost that Washington final to Eala, something unusual happened. Speaking after a later match at the Canadian Open, Pegula revealed that her own podcast had picked up somewhere in the range of 4,000 to 5,000 new subscribers in the days following that loss. Not because people felt sorry for her, because, in her own words, more or less, Filipino fans who just watched Eala win her first title turned around and folded Pegula into the celebration too, cheering for her as she left the stadium rather than treating her like the defeated villain. Think about how backwards that is by the normal rules of sports fandom. When your favorite athlete beats someone, you don't usually rush to follow the person who lost. You might respect them. You don't typically adopt them. But Pegula got adopted. On the court afterward, she thanked Filipino fans directly for helping grow the sport around the world, and the crowd cheered her for saying it. That tells you this was never really about defeating an opponent. It was about a community watching one of their own succeed on a stage most of them never expected to see her reach. And anyone standing close enough to that moment, even the woman on the losing side of the net, got pulled into the celebration. She didn't build the network, she inherited it. So let's go back to that number from earlier. 250,000 Filipino Americans in the New York metro area, concentrated most heavily in Queens. A short subway ride from the very stadium where the US Open is played. This is not a fan base Eala assembled one match at a time on social media. This is a community that existed before she was born. Families who built homes, businesses, churches, and social clubs across generations, long before anyone in that community had ever picked up a tennis racket professionally. Eala didn't summon that infrastructure into existence. She didn't create the hunger to see a Filipino athlete succeed on one of sport's biggest stages. What she did was give an existing, decades-old community something to converge around. A face, a name, a reason to show up together in one place at one time. That is a very different verb from build. It's closer to arrived, or maybe inherited. And once you see it that way, every image of flags in the stands stops looking like marketing or fan club noise. It starts looking like a homecoming. The honest part, this doesn't guarantee anything. Now, it would be dishonest to tell the story without the other half of it, because crowds don't hit forehands and flags don't serve out a set. Just this month, at the Cincinnati Open, Eala ran directly into that reality. Facing world number 10 Amanda Anisimova in the third round, Eala actually won the first set, 6-4, taking an early lead in a match that stretched past 2.5 hours. But Anisimova leveled it, 6-4, in the second, and then reeled off 6 straight games to close out the third set 6-2, ending Eala's 5-match winning streak against top 10 opponents. Afterward, Anisimova herself made a point of crediting how loved Eala is, noting there was real, audible support for her own side that night, which she said she appreciated. It's a useful reminder. Momentum in tennis resets to 0 at the start of every tournament. A crowd can lift a player emotionally, but it can't return a serve for her, and it can't guarantee her a single win in New York. Whatever happens in the draw, whoever she's matched against, none of the emotional weight behind her changes the fact that she has to go out and actually win the tennis matches. New York already knows her. But here's why New York specifically carries a different kind of weight. Because this isn't Eala's first time walking into that stadium with a community waiting for her. Go back to the 2025 US Open. Eala, then only 20 years old and ranked well outside the top 50, walked into her first-round match against a seeded opponent, world number 14 Clara Tauson, in front of a crowd so loudly behind her that the chair umpire had to remind fans to settle down midpoint. Down 1-5 in the deciding set, facing match point after match point against her, Eala somehow clawed her way back and won it in a marathon third-set tiebreak, becoming the first Filipino, man or woman, to win a Grand Slam main draw match in the Open era. Afterward, on court in front of that same crowd, she said something that's stuck with people ever since, that she doesn't have a home tournament of her own, so having this community show up for her at the US Open made her feel like she was home. That single sentence changes how you should read everything else in this story. Because if she'd built that following herself, this would just be the familiar story of a rising athlete slowly gathering fans. But she said it herself. This wasn't something she built. It was something she was given, and she was grateful for it. That's the emotional foundation this year's tournament sits on top of. New York already showed her who it was once. Now she's coming back. Beyond the Philippines. It's also worth being fair here, because it isn't only Filipino fans packing these stadiums anymore. Eala's rise has pulled in a much wider tennis audience. Casual fans who've simply never seen anyone play quite like her, commentators calling her one of the most magnetic young talents on tour, opponents like Coco Gauff publicly thanking her for bringing new energy and new demographics into arenas around the world. This isn't a story about pretending every fan cheering for Eala is Filipino. It's about recognizing what's underneath the biggest, loudest crowds. A community that was already there before the cameras arrived, and that's now being joined by people from every background who just want to watch someone play with that much heart. What happens next? So here's where things stand heading into New York. The 2026 US Open runs from August 23rd through September 13th at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. The main draw ceremony, where we finally learn who Eala faces in round 1, takes place on Thursday, August 27th, with main draw play beginning a few days later. Nobody, including Eala herself, knows yet what that draw will look like or how deep a run is realistic this time. But here's what we do already know before a single ball is struck. The Philippine flags will be there. The chants will be there. Families will make the trip from Queens, from Jersey City, from Long Island. Others will watch from restaurants, from community centers, from phones held up during a night shift. Some will be tuning in from thousands of miles away, in the middle of the night, back in the Philippines. And every single one of them will be tied together by the exact same feeling. Someone from home has made it here, onto one of the biggest stages tennis has to offer. Closing. So when you watch this year's US Open, and you see those flags filling the stands behind Alex Eala, don't just ask how many fans she has. Ask where they came from. Because the honest answer isn't she built this. The honest answer is that a community that has waited for generations to see itself represented finally has a face to rally around, and she simply showed up to meet them. If you've ever had family who left one country to build a life in another, if you've ever watched someone from home stand on a stage you never expected to see them reach, and felt something deeper than just sports, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments below. And if this kind of story is the kind of thing you want more of, make sure you're subscribed because we're not done covering this one, not by a long shot. Alex Eala's run at Flushing Meadows is just getting started, and neither are we.